We need to talk about Donovan Mitchell.
Donovan Mitchell is a superstar. Make no mistake about it.
Donovan Mitchell is the most underrated superstar in the league.
We wanted Donovan Mitchell.
Donovan Mitchell and the Cleveland Cavaliers are coming off a pretty impressive regular season, but a really disappointing postseason, where the Cavs ended up losing to the New York Knicks in the first round in only 5 games, and Donovan Mitchell individually had a really rough first round matchup. And at this point, even though the Cavs have a lot of nice young talent on the roster, there are some rumors about Donovan Mitchell potentially wanting to go to the team that just beat the Cavs in the New York Knicks. But quickly, before we get the video started, for those of you who may not know, I'm Juicy Sports. I make opinionated NBA content, and if you guys enjoy videos similar to this, hit that subscribe button, that like button, and that post notification bell. I also want to quickly mention that I recently started up an MMA channel, and if you guys are interested in that, the link will be in the description. But anyways, let's get into it. Ever since he was drafted, Donovan Mitchell was seen as one of the better younger players in the NBA, as it seemed like each and every season he just continued to get better year after year. And eventually with the team that drafted him in the Utah Jazz, they eventually became good enough to become a perennial playoff team. But although the Jazz were making the playoffs each and every season, it seemed like each and every year at the same time, they were coming up short. Maybe they would lose in the first round, maybe they would lose in the second round, but either way, they would never live up to their full expectations of potentially winning a championship, or at the bare minimum making it to the NBA Finals. And after making it to the playoffs but failing in the playoffs each and every year, Donovan then became restless with the situation and wanted to move on to a different team. And although he still was under contract, he had a team that he really wanted to go to at the time when he requested a trade. And that team that Donovan really wanted to go to was the New York Knicks. But after months of negotiating, the two sides just couldn't come up to an agreement, and eventually the Jazz decided to trade him to the Cleveland Cavaliers. And although this certainly wasn't the place that Donovan wanted to go to, at the end of the day, when you looked at the Cavs roster, it was pretty clear that they had a ton of talent on their team, and they probably had more talent than the Knicks had. So at the end of the day, it was seen as a pretty good situation for him. And in his first initial season with the Cavs, which was this year, during the regular year, this team looked very, very good. Of course, they had talent everywhere you looked, either in the starting lineup, but also on their bench unit. And when you looked at their play during the regular season, it seemed like they were a really good team. And ironically enough, their first round matchup was going to be against the team that Donovan wanted to go to in the New York Knicks. And going into that first round playoff matchup, I would say people thought it was relatively close, but the majority of the people thought the Cavs would win just due to the fact that they had the more talent. But during that series, the New York Knicks ended up winning, of course, but that wasn't even the most surprising thing about that. The most surprising thing about that series is not only did the Knicks win, but they won in very dominant fashion, winning in only 5 games. And when you looked at their main guys like Darius Garland, but also more specifically Donovan Mitchell, they just didn't play well whatsoever. And after that playoff series ended and Donovan Mitchell once again came up short in the playoffs, the rumors started to fly about him potentially requesting a trade or potentially waiting out his contract and leaving Cleveland. And at this point, after some time has passed since that, the rumors are still flying, and it seems like there is a real possibility that Donovan does either A, request a trade, or more realistically just waits out his contract and moves on to another team, and that team that he would most likely move on to would probably be the New York Knicks. One thing I do want to say though is you must take all these rumors with a grain of salt, because originally when Donovan was with the Utah Jazz, all the rumors were pointing to him going to the New York Knicks. And although I guess that was somewhat close to happening, at the end of the day it didn't end up happening, and of course he got traded to the Cleveland Cavaliers. But when you look more specifically at these rumors of Donovan potentially waiting out his contract and going to the Knicks in a couple years, that's even more unlikely than the original rumors, because of course in a couple of years maybe Donovan will still want to go to the Knicks, but there's a ton of factors that go into it. Obviously there's a decent amount of time between now and then, and who knows, maybe the Cavs can make a significant trade and get much better and win a championship or compete for a championship next season. Maybe the guys they have on their roster just get a lot better, and after that performance they had last year, maybe they just learn from that and get better in the playoffs next year and go pretty far. Maybe the New York Knicks don't play as well next year as they did this year, there's a ton of different factors that could change in a couple years. So saying that a guy is going to sign with a team in a couple years from now just isn't all that realistic at this point. Of course, I'm not saying that it can't happen. I'm just saying it's not something we should bank on at this point. But the question at this point is, if Donovan Mitchell did go to the New York Knicks, how good would this Knicks team be? Because if he were to go to New York, he probably would go there via free agency, and the players the Knicks currently have on their team would still be able to be on the roster, and they wouldn't need to trade away some guys. Now, one thing that I will say is I do think Julius Randle probably will be off the team in the next couple seasons, so we'll just take him out of the equation for this example. But on the New York Knicks roster, they would probably have Jalen Brunson and Donovan Mitchell in the backcourt, and they would have RJ Barrett as their small forward. Maybe they still have Obi Toppin and Mitchell Robinson to fill out the front court. And a team consisting of those guys, I would say, would be pretty good out there. They would be a top 5 team in my opinion in the Eastern Conference, and they would also be very prolific offensively. You would have a guy in Jalen Brunson who proved during these playoffs he's an extremely talented scorer out there. Of course, also Donovan Mitchell, who didn't play well in this previous year's playoffs, but over the years he's really proven the ability to be a very prolific scorer out there as well. RJ Barrett did a really nice job at improving his game over the years, and during this year's playoffs he also played very well. Obi Toppin has had his flashes, and I think if Julius Randle was off the team, Obi would have a lot more freedom and capability to do a little bit more out there, because he would have that security of knowing that if he made 1 or 2 mistakes, he wouldn't get pulled out of the game right away. So I do think that would actually be a huge benefit for him. And then you have Mitchell Robinson as your center that does a nice job at running the pick and lob offense, and could also do a pretty nice job for you at offensively rebounding while also playing good defense and defensively rebounding as well. But one thing I will say is, although I do think that team would be very good offensively, I do think they would struggle at least somewhat defensively. Because although the Knicks actually do have some nice individual defenders on their roster, like RJ Barrett in the starting lineup and Mitchell Robinson as well, Quentin Grimes coming off the bench, and some other guys, when you look at that backcourt consisting of Jalen Brunson and Donovan Mitchell, you do have 2 smaller guards out there, and that typically isn't something you would like to see. Typically what you would like to see, if you have 1 smaller point guard or 1 smaller shooting guard, you would like to see the other opposing guard would be at least decently big out there, 6'6" or 6'7" or above, while also having a really nice ability to defend out there. So that would probably be the only flaw that I can point to in this lineup. But one thing that I also will say is you probably would mismatch those 2 guys' minutes in Brunson and Donovan Mitchell, but at the same time play both of them at the end of the game. So I actually do think you could probably make that backcourt work at the end of the day, but offensively I do think they would be good enough in order to make up for some of their lack of defense. But at the end of the day, as I mentioned, I don't think this is imminent. If we're gonna have to wait a couple of seasons, I don't know how realistic this will be in that time frame, but either way we do have some time until that happens, so I guess only time will tell what does end up happening, with Donovan Mitchell potentially going to the New York Knicks, him potentially going to a different team, or him potentially staying with the Cavs. But whatever does end up happening, I will say I am extremely excited, because even if Donovan does end up staying with the Cavs, I actually do think they have a pretty bright future. They just have a ton of nice young talent on the roster at this point that's probably only going to get better. But anyways, let me know what you guys think in the comments. Do you think Donovan Mitchell will eventually move on to the New York Knicks, or do you not think so? But anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and if you did enjoy, check one of these 2 videos popping up now. And until the next time, peace out guys.